Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Run Sensible YouTube channel. Tonight I'm going to do a video. So this is the third video in the series of talking about the runs that you need to get better. Initially I put up a video on YouTube where I spoke about the in that video I talked about 4 different runs. So it was the easy run, the long run, interval run and tempo. In this series I will do 5, so I'll add in fartlek to that as well. They'd be the 5 kind of classic type of runs that you can do if you're a runner. In the first episode, I spoke about easy run and how that makes it a little bit better. And I'll recap a little bit on that as we go through tonight's episode. Last week, I talked specifically about the long run, when to add the long run and how to do it and what to do with it. And then in this week's episode, I'm going to talk about interval training. So just like the last 2 episodes, I'll talk about why we do interval training, both for physiological reasons, and I'll talk about the health benefits to interval training as well. I did a podcast on this, so there is a podcast specifically about this on my podcast channel, which is Run Sensible Podcast. You can check that out on any of the platforms that you download your podcast from. You can follow me on Instagram, so you can just see there at the bottom. My Instagram handle is just @RunSensible. So if you want to keep up to date with what the sort of stuff I'm doing, I make little videos about my training. Last year, I kind of got back into running after a little bit of a hiatus. Today, I think I've run 24 marathons today. Last year, I was trying to break a PB, so I'm 47 at the moment. I was trying to break my fastest marathon time, which is 3 hours and 8 minutes. I went to Valencia to try and do that, and I ended up doing 3 hours and 11 minutes. But I was really happy with that because 11 months before that, I was struggling to run a 5:40 per kilometer, and the 3:11 I think comes in at around 4:28 per kilometer, or 4:30, somewhere in around that. Anyway, I have a video on that on my YouTube channel as well. Enough of that. So this year I'm going to try and break 3 hours this year at the age of, I'll be 48 actually by the time I do another marathon. So that's a plan for the year, just if anybody hasn't been keeping up to date with the channel, or if this is the first video that you've seen. Anyway, it's worth checking out those other episodes, specifically the easy run. In the easy run video, I talk about how easy running will make you faster. So the buzzword all the time is, can you just do easy running and it'll make you faster? And I said, yes, it absolutely will. And I explain why, both physiologically and metabolically, why that'll happen. But there is a window. And when you get to that window, the next thing to do is add in that little bit of a long run, which I spoke about last week. So I talk about what is it you need to do to get your easy runs up to a certain point where you need to stretch one out and start making it a bit longer. So definitely worth checking out that video. And then tonight's video is talking about the interval training. So when I spoke about the easy run, saying the easy run will make you faster, and I gave the kind of analogy that if you go out and just run, if you went out now today and just ran a kilometer or a mile, whichever system that you use, I'm just going to stick with kilometers because I get confused all the time, like in my head, working back and forth. So if you go out and run a kilometer as fast as you can and get that time, and if you just for the next 4 weeks just do easy running, just do 40 minutes 3 times a week of easy running, 100% you'll come back next week and you'll run that, or you'll come back at the end of the month and you'll run the kilometer faster than what you are now, because easy running will make you faster, and that's just because it will make you just a much more kind of efficient human being, make you able to process the stuff that's happening in your body in order for you to run faster. But there is a ceiling, so there is a point where you'll get to where that kind of isn't happening anymore, you're not getting any better or any faster. And what you do then, and that is take up that long run. And then the other thing you can do, which I'm going to talk about tonight, is just start to introduce some interval training into your running schedule. So what we do with interval training is that interval training really, at essence, is more, it's not so much that you're working on the physiological side. You will be working on your physiology a bit, but it's much more working on the kind of neuromuscular facilitation, or across those muscles. And what I mean by that is with interval training, we're teaching our nervous system to be able to process the messages to tell our muscles, our joints, our tendons, ligaments, everything else, to make the neurological pathways for them to be able to move faster. Okay, so let's go back to our 1 kilometer, or let's for tonight just take a 5 kilometer. Say your goal is to run a 5K. So you're just doing a little bit of running. You want to get yourself trained up because you want to run a 5K. A little bit faster, okay? And you've done a couple of easy runs and you've built yourself up, and then you can run 5K. You can go and do a park run comfortably, right? Let's just say you're at that there, and you've done that just by doing some easy runs, and maybe you've dragged out one of the runs and made it a little bit longer. And let's just say your time for the 5K, let's just take 25 minutes. So that's running at 5 minutes per kilometer. So we'll just make the metrics really easy to understand. So somebody can run 25 minutes for 5K and they want to get faster now. So what you would suggest doing then is, on one of those days of the week, you start to introduce what we call interval training. So you're running, when you're doing your intervals, you need to be running faster than what you want to do your 5K in. So if you're running your 5K at, like, let's say you're going 5 minutes per kilometer, you're getting into 25 minutes. We would start off with something like maybe 10 by 1 minute on off. So you're gonna do a warm up and you're gonna run 1 minute at, let's say, 4:20 per kilometer. It's only a minute, not a kilometer. So you're doing that for a minute, and you're gonna have a minute easy, and you're doing another minute at 4:20, and then over and back, and you'll keep doing that until you get 10 minutes done. Okay, and what that's doing is when we spoke about the easy run, we talked about the kind of developing that metabolic fitness. I talked about laying down new mitochondria in the cells in the muscle cells on the day after. So when you're having your rest day, when your body's going through those adaptations to make you a little bit fitter and faster. And we spoke about opening up new blood pathways, so new arterial pathways going to the muscles, and then venular pathways coming back, bringing blood back to the heart. And I said that when you do all that and you lay down those pathways, you've got much more blood vessels now. So now you've got more pipes to carry the same volume of blood. So therefore, the pressure in the system is less. So now your blood pressure is going to be much less. That's going to make you much healthier. And it's going to make you much faster when you're running because the pressure is less in the system. So when we're doing our interval sessions, that's why it's important to have all that done with the easy runs and the long runs, because if you've laid down that physiology, now when you start to add the interval sessions, we're going to be working on the nervous system. We're going to be working on the nerves that bring messages to those big quadriceps, hamstrings, calves, glutes. We're going to be sending those messages saying, look, if you can do a minute 10 times at 4:20 per kilometer, it's going to really make running 25 minutes at 5 minutes per kilometer much easier. So now your time's going to start to come down quite quickly going the other way. So we've made our benefits from our easy run. We've kind of got to that ceiling, and now we're going to start to add in the interval session. And then each week you add on. So let's say this week you do 10 by 1 minute on off. Then the next week you might do 15 by 1 minute on off. And then the week after that you might do 10 by 2 minutes on off. So now we've built up from 10 minutes of intensity stuff to 15 minutes of intensity stuff. And then now we're up to 20 minutes of intensity stuff. So something like that for somebody who's just doing a basic park run, doing 10 times 2 minutes on and off. If you work through, maybe do a week or two at the 10 minutes, then the 15 minutes, and then another week or two at the 10 minutes, you're going to probably knock a minute off your time straight away. Like I would say within the space of 5 or 6 weeks, you'll easily knock a minute off your time. And then we can kind of drag that out and do the similar for the 10K, depending on your distance. So let's say your distance is your 5K. The amount of interval, the amount of distance you want to spend at that interval rate depends on the distance of running. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing 5K, if you're just an easy 5K running, but want to get a little bit faster, maybe 15 by 1 minute is plenty, because you're going to be spending 15 minutes at intensity stuff. Your race is only going to be 25 minutes. So you're definitely past halfway of what you need to do at intensity, if that makes sense. Moving it up to 10K, you'd want to be getting at least maybe 4 or 5 kilometers in your session at intensity pace. So if you're doing 10 by 2 minutes, that might be just about there. So you might want to bring that up to something like maybe 10 by 3 minutes or 8 by 800 meters. You can start to change from time into distance. So depending on what you're doing. So definitely for 10K, you want to be bringing the amount of time you spend running at interval pace needs to come up. And the same for half marathon. So I've just written a training program for my whole club. I'm coaching the running club, and I've written them a lot of them are doing half marathon in Madrid, which is in 12 weeks time. And yes, certainly some of those interval sessions I have for them there will be things like 6 by 800 meters off 2 minutes easy. And then there's another couple of sessions where it might be 5 by 1 kilometer on off. So they're getting 5 minutes at really, or 5 kilometers at high intensity training. Then there's a couple of sessions where it might be 3 times 2 kilometers, and that might go up to 4 or 5 times 2 kilometers. So they're building up to like 10K of intensity running, and that will also mix and match each week with the tempo training. So just to give you an example, what it means is like the relative amount of interval training you do is dependent on the distance of the race that you're going to be ending up doing. And you can just work it out. It's quite easy. You just kind of do it as a percentage. Some people might say, I need to do, in my interval training session, I need to be getting 50% of what my total distance is. Some people might get away with doing 30%. Some people might like to bring it up to 60 or 70% of what their overall session is. The more experienced you are as a runner, the more you'll be able to handle that kind of volume of intensity. starting out, even if you're watching this video and you're not worried about doing a 5K or 10K, you're just training for a half marathon or even a marathon, I would say err on the side of caution and don't add too much volume, which is at intensity. Your overall intensity should be a percentage of the overall volume that you do a week, and it definitely shouldn't be any more than 20% of your overall volume. So yeah, if you're going to do, let's say you're just in half marathon training mode now, I certainly wouldn't be trying to get up around 10 kilometers of interval training. That'd be way too much for somebody if you haven't done a half marathon before. I would say certainly getting up around 5 or 6 kilometers spent at intensity rate during one session is probably way more than enough. If you bring it up any more, your risk of injury then starts to get higher and higher. A person who's doing that, if you're getting up around 5 or 6, you think, well, maybe I can bring it up to 7 or 8 kilometers in that intensity session. You're far better off. You're going to get far better gains by just reducing that and adding it either side. So say you're doing 2K for warm-up and 2K for cool-down, you'd be far better off doing 3K for warm-up, 3K for cool-down. If you have the time and the energy to spend running, don't spend it. Don't think that just doing interval sessions is going to get you better bang for your buck. It won't. If this is your first, second, or even third half marathon, and you're just kind of working on maybe just pushing a little bit of a PB and not up around some of those fast times, or you something like maybe sub 130 or something like that, or faster, I would say, yeah, just err on the side of caution and maybe think more about volume than thinking about intensity or volume spent at intensity, if that makes sense. Again, if anybody needs any help in this, you can reach out to me on my Instagram channel. You can, just ask me any question if you want, or you can hit me up. A couple of people have done this since I started this, since I've started these live feeds. You can just email me, runsensible@gmail.com is my email address. A couple of people have emailed me, which kind of simple questions for me, but they just didn't understand them. I don't mind getting back to people trying to explain what it means and whatnot. And that's pretty much it for the interval training. A lot of people kind of try to make it really sexy and cool and kind of what I would say Instagrammable. But just keep it simple with your intensity runs. You certainly don't. You only want to be doing one a week. That's absolutely don't want to be doing any more than one a week. If you're only running 2 days a week, I don't think you would have any business or any point in doing any interval training. I would just stick with the 2 days a week, easy running, and try and make one of them a little bit longer. If you would want to be doing a minimum of 3 days a week in order to add an intensity session. And if you are doing 3 days a week, just make sure, or if you are adding an intensity session and you're doing 3 days a week, I would say just really watch and make sure that your overall time spent at interval isn't more than 80 or isn't more than 20% of your overall distance for that week, if that makes sense. So the best way you can do that is just making that long run a little bit longer, and making that easy run a little bit longer, and adding a good 2 or 3 kilometers either side for your warm up and cool down when you're doing your intensity session. And the important thing to add to that as well is when you're doing the intensity, let's say you're doing the 10 by 1 minute on and off. When you're on the off period, it's just a really easy jog, like literally a shuffle, just something that's more than a glorified walk. Or even if you feel that you've went that intense that you need to walk, it's totally fine. Just don't stand still. It only takes about 15 or 20 seconds for blood to start pooling. So I always tell people, like, it's totally fine to walk. In fact, when I'm doing my interval sessions, I quite often walk. Sometimes I'm doing stuff like 800s. I might have like 2 or 3 minutes rest or 2 minutes rest. And I might just, when I finish some of the 800s, maybe the first 3 or 4, I might be able to do it with just taking a little shuffle recovery. But maybe when I get up to the 5th, 6th, or 7th one, sometimes I take 30 seconds walk and then a minute of running, and then I get going again. That's totally fine. It's absolutely fine. You don't have to be pushing it all the time. You don't have to be kind of looking at your watch thinking that my overall time on Strava, if I walk, the overall average pace is going to be lower. It doesn't matter. Really, when you think about it, nobody's looking, nobody cares. We all think that people are watching and they're going to care what we think. They're not. Just run your own run, do your own stuff, do your own game. Don't be worried about anyone else thinks. Get out there, get a nice, easy warm-up, go as slow as you want in your warm-up, go as slow as you want in your cool-down. Just make sure that if you're doing those intervals, just that you nail whatever pace you need to go. And don't be trying to go faster than your pace. Just try and stick to the pace that you have planned. And I always tell people that I coach is that when you finish your interval session, you want to feel like you got a little bit left in the tank, that you could have went a little bit more. You don't want to feel absolutely spent, just bent over and done, totally finished, and thinking you don't even have energy for the cool down. If you've done that, you've went too hard, and your risk of injury is going to be so high. You're really going to be kind of putting yourself out there to be taking a couple of weeks off because you're injured. And that's pretty much it for the interval session, guys. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Like I say, I coach a couple of people on Strava. If anybody's interested in that, I've got a little Strava group. And I just charge I think it's like €20 a month. I charge people. And I'll just give one-on-one training and straightforward. Easy stuff. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions. I got Mike Brennan here. Do you need any tips for threshold intervals? So threshold, so intervals, I mean, tips for threshold intervals. So basically, when somebody talks about threshold, your threshold really is, it's kind of like an arbitrary number, and the threshold will depend on the distance of the race you're running. So for me, if I was talking about doing a threshold session, if I'm going a 5K, so now at the moment, I'd probably do a 5K in about 4 minutes, or in about maybe just under 20 minutes. I think I did one there about a month ago in 1936. So that's running at about 3:58 per kilometer, okay, or probably just a little bit quicker than that. So let's just say 3:58 per kilometer. So if I want to train for that specifically, the threshold for that is going to be a little bit faster than that, okay? Because what our threshold is the threshold is when we exercise, we produce a byproduct called lactate, okay? And lactate, when it's in your muscles, will start to build up and start to give you a little bit of irritation, and then eventually, if you're running below threshold, you can reuse the lactate, put it back into the Krebs cycle, to turn it back into pyruvate, and then use it as an energy source, okay? And you will do that quite well, depending on your fitness. When you get to a certain point where you're building up so much lactate that you can't buffer it out of the system quick enough, that's what we call threshold. This is your lactate threshold. So you've gone beyond the threshold for being able to deal with lactate. And again, if you want to get better, so you want to push your VO2 max. I'm a bit confused exactly what, Mike, you're asking me, but if it's specifically threshold training, would usually be to increase your VO2 max. And the best way to do that is just go at your really hard pace for about, with running, we probably talk about maybe 4 or 5 minute intervals. So maybe 4 minutes flat out, kind of going pretty hard, maybe going about 80 to 85% of your maximum. Take a little bit of time, and then might do 5 or 6 of those. If it was for cycling, you might go, the duration might be a little bit longer. It might be, instead of 4 minutes, you might be doing 6 or 8 minutes, and just really pushing that threshold. So you basically, what you want to be doing is you want to be pushing your body to the point where you're not able to buffer out the amount of lactate you have. So like I said, for the 5K, it's for 5K training, so not worry about VO2 max here. For 5K training, I would just be running certainly faster my 5K pace. My intervals for 10K, if I was doing 10K training, they wouldn't be as fast as 5K, but I might add some more volume to them. And then that'll be the same respectively for half marathon, if that makes sense. My marathon intervals, let's say this year I'm going to be training for a sub 3 hour marathon, which is running at 4:15 per kilometer. So my threshold training might be in around maybe 3:50 or 3:55, but that's pretty much my 5K pace. So again, it's relative to the distance that you want to do, in terms of what you're doing, unless, like I said earlier, you're talking about threshold. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained that quite well. Hope I did. But like I said, the question is probably a little bit of information missing with the question, but if you want to email me, absolutely no problem. That's pretty much it for the episode, guys. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening in. Thanks for the questions there, Mike, and hello to Brenda Rooney. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, follow me there on Instagram. You can see there below. It's at Run Sensible on Instagram. It's great. The Instagram channel is growing, which is great. I have an interview coming up on Tuesday next week. I'm sitting down with this woman. She's really cool. She had some kind of serious heart operation. She was a runner, and then she had some really quite serious and life-threatening heart conditions that she had surgery for, and she came back and she ran a marathon. So we're going to sit down and chat about that. That's on the podcast. That won't be on this channel. But yeah, apart from that, that's pretty much it for this evening, and that's what's coming up in the channel. But anyway, thank you all for listening. And remember, guys, run far, run fast, but most of all, run sensible.